Narrative is funded by viewers like you. Support our independent journalism at patreon.com/narrative. And someone who hasn't faced any consequences is Rudy Giuliani until now, because suddenly the world seems to be getting a little bit smaller for Rudy Giuliani as he's, been the subject of the search warrant. They've seized his electronic equipment, where again, I'm sure he's done absolutely nothing to keep this stuff secret. He's probably overtly obvious about every single bit of crime that he's been doing. And what's interesting today is that we've learned that a lot of this comes, Daniel Goldman from the impeachment trial said that the reason that there's this investigation is the financial side of the impeachment trial. So I'm going to run through a little bit of information about that. We know that trial involved the bagman and his two bagmen, Parnas and Furman, with these two guys that showed up in the news a lot during the impeachment trial for all their shenanigans. And I'll explain some of them in a second. Now, it's important as well to notice that they're connected to some pretty big deal bosses all the way in Russia and Ukraine. People like Dmitry Firtash, people like Semyon Mogilevich, and also Alexander Angert. These are pretty big name, mob bosses, and I'm sure LB will have things to say about them. And Vladimir Putin, of course. There's all these characters fit into the world of Rudy Giuliani's misadventures in Ukraine and Russia. We found out about the impeachment trial when we found out that Ambassador Yovanovitch, thank you very much, was axed because of a campaign by Giuliani, right? That campaign actually started a year before we publicly know about it. I think that it just happened around the time of last summer, but it happened in the previous summer, which is now 2018. On the left-hand side, you'll see that there's a meeting that took place between Parnas and Donald Trump. And this is the first time that there was some pressure to get rid of the ambassador. Then you got these guys meeting with Donald Trump in a private dinner, which, why are they meeting with Donald Trump in a private dinner in April 2018 to ask for the ambassador to get fired. And then soon afterwards, around May, there's Pete Sessions, the former congressman from Texas, and very, very powerful guy from the Rules Committee of the GOP, meeting with Parnas and Furman again. And this time, immediately after their meeting, he sends a letter to Mike Pompeo saying as well that he's really concerned about all the stuff that he's hearing about Ambassador Maria, let's just call it that. And so that letter is interesting reading. But what we're basically seeing is a track record of a year-long attempt by the Ukrainian government to get the American government to get rid of the American ambassador in Ukraine, who's really an anti-corruption activist and someone very, very about clean government and about clean democracy. And he's being a pain in their butt, really, for all the activities that they're doing, which are corrupt. So we'll get rid of her. We'll do a little pressure campaign on the Americans to get rid of the ambassador, which they do. Now, but this campaign comes along with a lot of money. It didn't just show up. Pete Sessions didn't show up for that nice Instagram photo just because. He showed up because he was the beneficiary of, as much as $3 million in different funds and through different accounts, through different PACs and different organizations to him by Furman and his colleagues. In fact, I don't know if Donald Trump even had that dinner for free. I think that dinner might have come at some sort of cost. But the one thing we do know definitely came at a cost is Rudy Giuliani, because Rudy Giuliani got at least $500,000 by Furman and Parnas, paid through that fraud guarantee company or a similar kind of company. So in total, over this one period of 1 year, there were $1 million in payments that were done through legitimate looking things like legal fees or consulting fee or what have you. But it was actually money being funneled from the Ukrainian government of Poroshenko at the time, trying to get the American government to get this American ambassador off their neck because she's too much of a problem for them trying to get clean government into their world. So this is the money I think that they're talking about. This is the money I think that they're talking about when they talk about the financial side of the impeachment trial, that there is a lot of money flowing from these Ukrainians for some reason into the GOP. And why is it showing up there? And it's not just because they like the GOP.
There was also, wasn't Giuliani involved? He was like the cybersecurity advisor to some cities in Ukraine around that time.
Kyiv, yeah.
Like Portless Glam wrote a lot about that.
Yeah, she's terrific. I worked with her on some of that. Yeah, she's great. And Kharkiv is a regular place for Rudy Giuliani to hang out. He, in fact, addressed them and was going to build them a cybersecurity center, just like the one they have in New York. Not that I know why they would need that. But there's a lot of connectivity there between him and the mayor of Kharkiv, and also the Poroshenko government, because many photographs of Rudy Giuliani just appearing there for some reason. The thing about the cybersecurity thing, he was working for the president. He was working on an official capacity as the cybersecurity czar of the American government.
Yes.
Which is like...
Imagine, that's what he got as his little token prize when and they were pissed. Donald and Rudy were really... They were locking horns. They've done this. You guys have heard me say this for years. It's like these two men do not like each other. They're soulmates, so they tolerate each other. They're in deep together. They're part of a syndicate together. Also, I think there are moments of real loathing going back and forth. And that was because, remember, he wanted to be Attorney General, and he didn't get to be Attorney General. And so then he shows up, and he's at that one of Donald's first boardroom meetings. He was trying to reframe The Apprentice. It was The Apprentice, the presidency version. Remember when he'd sit at the table and he'd have all the people around him? And so, it was before even the Dear Leader stuff started with his cabinet. This was just like, these are my advisors and these are the projects we're working on. And it was literally a Mark Burnett set. Yeah. And Giuliani's there and Donald was like, okay, Rudy, tell everybody what you're doing now. You could tell Giuliani just leveraged him. He was like, no, you're going to let me have something. And what can you imagine the resentment?
Can you imagine the resentment that Rudy has towards Donald because he became president and not the other way around? Oh, there must be just a lot of bitterness over there. Come on, the guy's a politician.
I mean, come on. Something.
Yeah.
They're both such loathsome people that it makes sense that they would hate each other, because how could anyone like either one of them, really?
Good point. That's exactly correct.
It's like multiplying zeros.
That's where he got his cybersecurity thing is. I think I even did a tweet back then. I know I did because I retweeted. Someone circled it around in my mentions again. And this is a good time to remind everybody that the mob is completely taken over. The LA, because it's like, oh my God, the cybersecurity czar. Are you kidding me?
Do you think he locked up his phone in any secure way? I don't think so. I think his phone, it seems like it's like he calls everybody all the time. I'm sure every little bit of detail is still there.
I left a message for the FBI yesterday on his phone. Yes.
Exactly. So it's interesting as well. It's worth pointing out that Pompeo might find himself in a little bit of trouble as well in relation to all of this. He's, of course, trying to run for the presidency because here he is taking action after this letter from Pete Sessions to try and get rid of the ambassador. In fact, does fire the ambassador after all. So Pete Sessions is no longer in Congress. He doesn't get to worry about too much of this. But there is an indictment, and you're all welcome to go read it, explaining how all this Ukrainian money suddenly found its way to Pete Sessions, particularly through the NRCC. The NRCC is particularly interesting, and I'll wrap up soon, is because it also implicates two other people. One person it implicates is McCarthy, Kevin McCarthy, because he's part of this organization that got all this money, but also because he was aware of all this activity going on with Sessions and didn't do anything. In fact, it also implicates Devin Nunes. And there's a whole bit of a sidebar which we don't have to do tonight. But these two guys, McCarthy and Nunes, have a lot to worry about right now as well, because their positions look increasingly tenuous as all these different players come into view here. It looks to me like we could see some of the leadership of the Republican Congressional caucus finding itself in some trouble over all of this. Maybe, who knows? I'm bad at predicting these things.
Yeah, I did predict several years ago that Devin Nunes, when all is said and done, would serve more time in prison than anybody else involved in the Trump organization.
As he should. That guy is so corrupt. Could not be any more corrupt. I mean, he shows us my prediction. He's just the worst of the worst.
It's the worst of the worst. Do you remember the first time he and Schiff came in front of the cameras at some sort of update of the Intelligence Committee, some kind of thing that they had seen? I think it was around the election, or someone that they had interviewed, and they stepped out. It was right around the time that Grassley and Feinberg on the Senate side stepped out and holding each other, and they looked like ghosts. What did we just see? They saw something. And Nunes and Schiff stepped out, and Nunes started talking and saying things to the press and denying things. And Adam Schiff, you could see it in his face. You could see the wheels going, oh shit, this guy's lying. And he's, I wouldn't say that necessarily. And came in and interrupted him and corrected him because he was lying. And Nunes shot him a side eye. And that was the beginning of the GOP takedown of Adam Schiff. Because Adam Schiff was like, no, you're not going to do this. You're not going to run this disinformation to the American people about what actually is going on with this presidency.
I remember that
because it wasn't. Nunes was not always that way. Nunes and Schiff wrote almost the same thing in condemning Snowden, for example, during that whole thing. If you go back and read the older things, they both said, no, this guy's bad, blah, blah, whatever they said. Nunes turned. He had that
Alpha, and he had the Alpha Omega winery. He invested in that. And then there was a boat up in Central California, a little yacht trip with a bunch of underage girls. And that got popped for the winery guys. And he hasn't been the same since. Let's call it what it is.
Unbelievable. These guys are somehow reelected time after time. And I don't know what Nunes is.
That place is so red. It's never going to. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just crazy. Well, hopefully one day he'll get out of power or he'll find himself in jail because that's where he belongs. So, but when you look at this totality of this whole thing, it's interesting, right? Because you got all these mob figures and then you've got Ukraine, and Ukraine is very tied to the Ukrainian mobsters. You should tell us, LB, because this is really everyone should know that LB is the reason we all know that the mob is actually Donald Trump. At least that's the way I know. And I think many other people know that Donald Trump was related to the Russian mob. It's because LB was doggedly saying it day after day on Twitter, because that's how we all found out about it. And thank you for doing that, LB, because
I was like, if I just say this one word over and over again, maybe it will penetrate. Just a little 3-letter word, mob. Mob. I used to do the Muppet, put the Muppet gifts in there every day. It's the mob, everybody. It's the mob.
And I used to tell people, hey, Trump is a mobster. And they'd be like, what? And I said, no, Trump's a mobster, based on what you were saying. And slowly over time, everyone changed their opinions. And finally, the thing that sounded impossible, he actually is a mobster. The president is a mobster. Let's get rid of him. Yeah, good work. Well done. Not bad. Pat yourself on the back.
Welcome.
Tonight's 100-day special event is brought to you by Helix Sleep. I've heard it from so many people. The one thing that's changed since January is their sleep. Not waking up worrying about what the president might have done or said or tweeted makes the world of a difference. I don't think I had a good solid night's sleep in 4 years. And it wasn't only the president. My 10-year-old mattress, which started life as a 12-inch foam mattress, had shrunk to an 8-inch mattress, and getting out of bed was often more of a slide than a bounce. It was time for a new mattress. Helix Sleep has a quiz that takes just 2 minutes to complete and matches your body type and sleep preferences to the perfect mattress for you. Why would you buy a mattress made for somebody else? Changing the course of a country can take a village. Changing the course of your sleep takes a quiz. Helix is offering up to $200 off all mattress orders and 2 free pillows for our listeners at helixsleep.com/narrative. That's the way we spell narrative, NARATIV. That's helixsleep.com/narrative for up to $200 off and 2 free pillows just for you.
It's a weird thing to be known for.
Well, it's a good thing.
Yeah.
But what the tie with the Ukrainian mob is really interesting because they're not really Ukrainian. They are Ukrainian, but they're a front for Russia, right? They're like a shield for Russia.
Right. And just to remind you, the first time I ever even shared my voice and people knew I was a woman, because they had all assumed I did run it very covertly for a long time. I only chose like male gifts and male. Anytime I chose anything that would have a gender, I always intentionally chose male, even though it was subliminal for you guys. And I was writing such muscular stuff that nobody was thinking this was coming from a woman, which made me feel nice and safe and comfortable. And especially my husband, who was like, what are you doing? I was like, oh no. But okay, so that being said, the first time I shared my voice so people could tell who was with you, Zev, on this program about Marie Yovanovitch and about the threat that had, because it was such a threat to me that I had to speak. I could not stay quiet. I was very nervous, but thank you for how you gently nurtured me into now ruining my life by showing up live on this program every week. Okay, so the Ukrainian thing. Here's the way to think about it, and I brought all that history up between you and I about because I said it on that program too, and I think it's the best way for people to visualize and understand this. So, in the era of the Soviet Union, in the Cold War days, before the Soviet Union broke apart and we ended up with Russia and all these, all the countries being, some of them being independent. You have to understand that the gangsters we're dealing with now, the syndicate that got set in that time, in the time of the Soviet Union, those are the borders to draw. If you're looking at a map, you need to think about that. And so the underworld of organized crime and intelligence services is underneath that. It never broke apart. It didn't. This is a whole other economy. It's a whole other world. Everyone's connected in very different ways. And they even draw their own lines and borders that still don't match the national borders under which they're operating. But that is where the roadblocks are that they're going to find when it comes to different laws in different nations and what they might be up against with law enforcement in terms of being caught, which is why they all use that offshore laundromat. And a lot of those people we were talking about in the beginning, you guys, with the poker games and the Trump Tower, they're all in that offshore laundromat. Okay. They're all in there. So those art dealers and all that shit. So that's what you want. And we see the map on the surface and what it looks like today, but you need to understand there's a totally different map underneath, and it's all still connected the way that it was back in the era of the Soviet Union. They're still doing things. And Ukraine in that time, and still to this day, was the center of tremendous national resources for the Soviet Union, a lot of operations, it was really a sort of the heart of that empire and its people. It really was. It had suffered horribly under Stalin. It's the history of Ukraine in and of itself is very rich history, but the land itself is also very rich land. And so folks like you hear about Mogilevich, and we've talked about him, and Unger's written about him, Craig Unger at length. He's Ukrainian. But he's head of the he was a head of the Sultanskaya Bratva, which was based in Moscow. But he's a Ukrainian man in terms of where he was born and where he's raised. So in Ukraine, now that's not to say that all of the Ukraine is Russian organized crime because of that era, because we're still very close to that. Americans think in short little terms, years or decades or presidencies. I look at something and I'm like, 100 years ago was my grandfather's time. So you have to think that way. Okay, so 50 years ago or 30 years ago. Not that long ago, everybody. Not long ago. Those guys are still around. They set all this stuff up. They had a lot of traffic going on. And as the Soviet Union fell, they were part of working with what the Kremlin was also becoming, because the KGB got broken apart. It became these other divisions. They were still working with the intelligence services, right, out of Moscow and St. Petersburg. They were still working with that elite part of Russian intelligence as an organized crime branch or arm for it. Yeah. So that's why also these men connect right back into the intelligence service as well. They just do. It's a very different thing over there, organized crime. It is, and if you talk to people in the intelligence world, they say, it's a branch of Russian intelligence. It's like a division, the mobsters. If you talk to people in the organized crime, that study organized crime, I don't know, they run the whole fucking thing, and intelligence services are a branch of the mob. So it depends on how you look at it. But that's not all of what Ukraine is today, but that syndicate is still in place and has a tremendous amount of power. And that's the syndicate that has its hooks into our former president and hooks into Rudy Giuliani.
In fact, there's this really interesting map.
That's it.
So this is interesting because Yanukovych was the former leader of the Ukraine, but it was installed by Putin, and Paul Manafort was his number one advisor. And they stole about $1.5 billion, which is a lot, from Ukraine on the way out when they were kicked out of power. But you see how close everyone is here. These are not far away from Viktor Yanukovych and Vladimir Putin. So Donald Trump just, Paul Manafort's connecting them. Rudy Giuliani connects to Pavel Fuchs. Pavel Fuchs is another one of these oligarchs from Ukraine.
Yep.
Yeah.
You could even, for Yanukovych, you definitely can go through Paul Manafort to Donald Trump. But for organized crime, what we call Russian organized crime, which really is Eastern European organized crime when it comes to the old Soviet network, you could put Donald Trump right next to Yanukovych as a puppet for Putin. Right. And the reason you can do that is it is that crime syndicate, the same crime syndicate that helped install Vladimir Putin, that's still behind him. They're kind of fighting a little bit. The same crime syndicate that would have been behind Yanukovych. That's the crime syndicate that went to New York, landed in Fred Trump's territory, and started rolling up the Genovese crime family. So Donald historically is much closer to these criminals than Paul Manafort.
Right. This is an old map, actually. It's interesting because now we know a lot more about how close Donald Trump is to Vladimir Putin. But when I made this, we didn't know that much. We actually just knew that Paul Manafort was somehow connected and seemed really interesting. So thank you. Good analysis. Okay, we have to talk about Tucker. So let's talk about Tucker. Let's talk about Tucker.
Oh, yeah. I wanted to talk about Tucker. I hate him, and I don't want to give him too much attention because he's such a...
Just want to say you hate him.
No, he's just such a idiot. And I don't really understand why any thinking person would watch him and get anything out of it, because it's just preposterous. But he's gotten into this phase now where he's saying things that are actively dangerous to national security, frankly. Yeah. And it just got me to thinking. This week, he went on TV and lied about Konstantin Kilimnik. And
I didn't see that. What did he say about Konstantin?
This is that guy Asen who retweets this stuff on Twitter. So sometimes I'll watch the clips just to find out. First of all, he pronounced his name wrong. He pronounced it Konstantin Kilimnik, as if he had no idea who this guy was. Because we know you know who he is, Tucker. Pronouncing the name wrong isn't going to save you. And he said that Mueller was, I wrote it down, portraying him as an agent of Russia, that was a lie. That's what he said. It was a lie. And that this Ukrainian businessman is really blah, blah, blah. And that lie formed the basis for the whole Russia hoax. This is Tucker saying this week.
Wow.
Okay?
Wow.
This comes on the heels of him saying last week that people who observe children wearing masks should call Child Protective Services and go after the parents and go after the kids. Now, free speech, yes, but there's a line somewhere to be drawn. He can't go on TV, and if he finds out what the nuclear codes are, he can't read them. He can't talk about troop movements and stuff like that on TV. That's illegal. Going and saying the stuff about the masks and the vaccinations at this stage is analogous to going on TV with the same sort of platform in the early 80s and saying that AIDS was not real and that it's totally okay to have unprotected anal sex with as many people as possible because it's fun and we want our freedoms, man. Nothing's going to affect our freedoms. Like, at a certain point, he's actively endangering people. And I wonder, especially with the Konstantin Kilimnik, with these, it's just a lie. The guy's a fucking Russian intelligence officer. Marco Rubio signed off on a document that said he was.
Yeah,
fucking absolutely. Tom Cotton signed that thing. Yeah. He's a goddamn Russian intelligence officer.
Of course
so
he is.
Tucker going on there and lying about that to me, there's a point at which the people in the Department of Defense and State need to fucking step in and say something. They either need to call Murdoch directly or call Tucker or just go on live TV and say, this guy is disseminating disinformation that comes from Russia. Don't watch it. Shut it down. At what point, and I don't know what the answer is, but there is a point at which what he's saying is too dangerous to be on the air because it's a lie and it's spreading disinformation to the point where it's going to get people killed.
They keep saying that he's an entertainer. Yeah.
Yes, it's escalating. Whatever. But that's not how it's presented.
Yeah,
it's not presented as him being an entertainer. So I don't know what the deal is. I don't know how this would work. And it's obviously a slippery slope, but you can't go out there and lie like that. You just can't fucking do it. Too many people have died. What is the goddamn number of people that have to be dead before somebody steps in and shuts this fucking guy up?
Because
he needs to be taken off the air.
Absolutely.
Fox News, in general, but him especially, he needs to be taken the fuck off the air. And that Rupert Murdoch needs to be shut down. Maybe he needs to be fined. I don't know. There has to be some way within the laws of the land, within the Department of Defense, that they can shut down fucking lies and shit. Lincoln did it during the Civil War. He shut shit down. Yes, he did. He shut down media operations that were printing shit that was not true or bad for morale. He shut it down. He put editors in jail.
That's really interesting.
Yes,
under what legislation?
No, Lincoln is not a god who did everything. I'm saying he did. Okay,
that's important. I think they should be shutting these.
This is the equivalent of him doing the sort of shouting fire, and I hate even saying it, it's so cliche, shouting fire in the crowded theater when there's no fire, but he's doing it on primetime every night to millions of people who think that he's correct. And it's insanity.
Well,
and it needs to
he
stop.
has more than one media platform, right? So there is also the Daily Caller, which he owns.
Shut that shit down.
And maybe he's a Russian intelligence officer. I don't know.
He might not know that he is, but he is. He's acting like one.
You know what? He
is
may
there
as
a
well
difference?
be.
Yeah.
What's the fucking difference? You go on TV, and how is he any different than what's on RT right now?
Yeah. He's not. Often exactly the same talking points. Often.
Could even be worse. Worse.
There's a thing about the department.
He's an odd person in many ways when you start pulling at his history, who he's been connected to, what's going on with him, whether he's actually even making money. This is an odd duck, guys. He's not. I mean, even Lou Dobbs. Like, people don't know Lou Dobbs. How long Lou Dobbs and Donald Trump knew each other. Those guys knew each other for fucking ever, right? They were running buddies. Folks don't know that, right? They just think Lou Dobbs all of a sudden became a Trump fan when Trump was president. But Lou, you could see that Lou was in that horse shit of Kremlin propaganda and pushing it early on. Now that we could go back and dissect it, there's something about Tucker that's even odder than that. This is an odd guy. He doesn't need to be doing this. He's very wealthy. It doesn't quite make sense what he's chosen to do with his life.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly not journalism, and it's certainly, the Department of Defense plays mainly Fox News at military installations around the world, American military installations. So these guys are serving America and getting fed a diet of Tucker Carlson and Sean Hannity at night. I mean, this is not a good thing. For one thing that can be done today is they can shut that down. They can no longer provide Fox News to military installations around the world. It's just not necessary. It's not true from what we can tell, and it's propaganda. Why would we be feeding that to our American services officers? It just doesn't make any sense.
Somebody was saying in the comments the FCC can get involved, and maybe that's the answer. Maybe they need to find them like $500 billion, like some fuck ton amount of money. That be like, you take him off or you pay this. Yeah.
Well, all those voting machine lawsuits are going to be playing a similar kind of role. I mean, they're facing billions and billions of dollars if they lose the cases against Dominion. So it acts like that. But I agree with you. The FCC should be taking
that shit's going to go on forever, though. Will be Devin Nunes will be let out of prison 50 years from now, and that will still be going on. The government needs to act. It's a national security emergency, frankly.
I agree with you. I think it's a foreign intelligence operation, basically. That's what we're getting fed on Fox News. We don't need to get fed that. Why are we getting fed that? It makes no sense. Everyone's home needs to get this? No, absolutely not. If people really want it, they should be able to get to it, but it shouldn't be available on cable for everybody. It's just ridiculous.
You can find the cable carriers. So listen, the MSOs, which is what we used to call them way back in the day, which are the cable operators, those are all go local, then like a larger district. So if you're someone if you're a pay channel or any of that, you have to strike all these different agreements with all those folks. Mm-hmm. Where it comes to the national companies, distributors, right? The satellites, right? Where you do one contract with them if you're a company that's a content provider, and they, especially premium content or pay for content, it's all changed a little bit since I was in this world decades ago. But that then, the one deal, one agreement, and you make it across the broad spectrum no matter where you are. So I don't know why we can't put something government-wise, regulation-wise, in there with those operators. And that seems to me, certainly as customers, we can each you can call your cable company or you can call your satellite company, say, take this shit off. I don't care. And once you start stripping them out of those contracts, then shit's going to change. It's not going to change with the advertisers. We've only seen that change so much. The Murdochs are really willing to continue to fund this thing. They will. Lachlan Murdoch, this is his little baby, Tucker Carlson, and so he's going to nurture that baby all the way to grandpa land, right? That is his child that's going to live in the house with him for the rest of his life. He loves this. This is Lachlan, okay?
Yeah, this is their thing.
It's not Rupert, it's Lachlan. This is their thing. It could be Rupert too, but this is his thing. So advertisers mean nothing to them. I know they mean, and you just can't say that because, okay, maybe they mean a little bit. It is money, but they can keep going without that. God only knows where some of the money's coming in from their funds that they all have named by the names of their yachts. It's crazy. The Murdoch laundromat, offshore laundromat, is something to behold. If you guys haven't laid eyes on that, it's incredible.
Well, it's not only America. I mean, it's happening everywhere in the world. It's happening in Australia.
It's happening everywhere.
In the UK.
But other places are.
What is this organization?
Other places are taking them off their airwaves. So I'm just saying, customers, we can have it be stripped. But if we want to come in there with any kind of legislation or enforcing laws that exist in ways that are a little bit more consequential, those are the contracts you need to get, not the advertisement, the contracts with the cable operators and the contracts with the satellite companies.
Oh, there's a lot of pressure that can be applied to the heads of Verizon or Comcast, or even if it's just a call from the president or someone in the White House saying, "No, we're not so pleased about all of this." They can chop these guys off the air in a second. Remember that Bill Barr was also on Verizon? It was a Verizon legal counsel for the longest time. Wasn't it Bill Barr? Yeah. Interesting. Well, that's the show for tonight. Let's get rid of Fox News. We'll take over their space on the cable channel if they need something. We're available. Thanks, guys. What an interesting show. I think we covered a lot of territory. Boy, we learned a lot. You got plans for the weekend? Anything exciting? Are you guys allowed out yet? Are you in the world? Are you participating in regular life? Tuesday. It's exciting.
Tuesday, I'm fully, you wait 2 weeks after your last vaccination for the 2-shot people. And then Thursday, I have been letting it all go. Thursday, things are happening. Hair, nails.
Oh, wow.
Massage.
Oh, can't wait to see all that next Friday. It's a whole good reason to tune in.
I don't know if I can make it to the dermatologist, but the rest of it is going down.
Fantastic.
It's happening.
You've earned it.
Yes, thank you.
Are you going to go to McDonald's after this, Greg? Just get another burger and see how.
Oh, no, I can't. No more burgers. I did after I got my second shot, I did go to the diner. I did because the diners are open, and I sat inside and I ate. I did what I said I wanted to do, which was sit and drink coffee and make my lists. There was like 2 other people in there, so it was okay. Awesome. I felt like I'm okay.
That's something to look forward to. Yeah. We still in Canada are not able to get vaccines to people, so I have no idea why, but there you go. It's okay. We'll get this soon enough. Okay. Have a good night, guys, and have a great weekend. Thanks for watching the after show on Narrative. Have a good night. Yeah. Narrative is funded by viewers like you. Support our independent journalism at patreon.com/narrative. Tonight's special event is brought to you by Policy Genius. Now that the world seems to have settled down a little bit, hopefully you're finding some time to focus on your own personal affairs. My mother is full of great advice, even great financial advice, and she's always going on about the importance of life insurance. Frankly, who has the time to go calling up individual insurance companies to compare different policies and quotes? It's just so much work deciding on what the right policy is for me or for you. That's why I turned to Policy Genius. Why Policy Genius? Because Policy Genius makes it easy to compare quotes from over a dozen top insurers all in one place. Why compare? Well, you can save 50% or more on life insurance by comparing quotes with Policy Genius. The licensed experts at Policy Genius work for you, not the insurance company, so you can trust them to help you navigate every step of the shopping and buying process. Head to policygenius.com to get started right now. Policy Genius. When it comes to insurance, it's nice to get it right. Tonight's special event is brought to you by Policy Genius.